Why do you think it is that people are so dogmatic about cholesterol and its impact on atherosclerosis? Like, a lot of people want to assert, if I have no inflammation, I'm insulin sensitive, etc., I can't have plaque accumulation, and as long as I stay metabolically fit and healthy, then it's not a concern. Like, are these people just completely neglecting everything intentionally to not make their diet models seem bad? Or like, what do you think is the, like, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around somebody who has a, almost a self-induced familial hypercholesterolemia level from their carnivore diet saying something like, don't worry about it.
I don't know that I can answer that question. And I certainly have spent some time in the past trying to understand that. And I've even used the example of FH to try to make the point, right? So for people watching us who don't know what that is, so FH is a disease called familial hypercholesterolemia, and it's actually the second most common genetic cause of atherosclerosis. Now, it's a disease, it's a genetic disease, but it's a polygenic disease, and it's very heterogeneous, meaning it's not like, Huntington's disease, where there's one gene that causes the disease, or even LPA, where the single LPA gene leads to elevated Lp(a), which is actually the most common familial form of atherosclerosis. Here, you have literally thousands of different mutations that all produce the same phenotype. And the disease is defined by the phenotype, not the genotype. So FH is defined by having an LDL cholesterol greater than 190 milligrams per deciliter. So what do we know about people with familial hypercholesterolemia? Well, we know that regardless of their metabolic status, regardless of their inflammation, regardless of how high their HDL is and how low their triglycerides are and all the other things that people in this camp want to talk about, they still get accelerated atherosclerosis at an enormous rate. And their atherosclerotic risk can be almost completely attenuated by lipid-lowering therapy. In fact, if lipid-lowering therapy is initiated early enough, and now that we have better and better genetic screening for this, we're able to treat people in their teenage years when they have this condition, they go on to live normal lives. But the key is, because it's basically an area under the curve problem, how high and how long is your exposure to ApoB? So, if you don't diagnose somebody with FH until they're 50, they might not live a totally normal lifespan. But if you diagnose somebody at 20, they almost assuredly will, provided you get the LDL low enough. So, again, I've never heard a compelling answer for why FH isn't at least one model here. Furthermore, the Mendelian randomization very clearly establishes the causality of LDL. So I suppose you would have to come up with an argument, which I am not aware of, that would say, even though LDL is causal, because you can't dispute that, not if you understand mathematics and science, even if LDL is causal, there's something so protective about my fill-in-the-blank diet that it offsets any of the harm of LDL in a way that the person with familial hypercholesterolemia who's eating a normal diet doesn't have. Even though on the surface, by all measurable accounts, we're both the same insulin sensitivity, low inflammation, etc. Again, part of what makes this difficult is that people confuse causality with sufficiency. And again, this is where I think everybody would benefit from just like a very simple course in formal logic and maybe philosophy of logic or something like that, right? So what happens is it's sort of like your grandmother smoked a pack a day her whole life and she's totally fine, therefore smoking is fine.
Yeah.
Right? That you got to be very careful when you cherry pick because you can get burned.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that smoking isn't 1,000% more likely to cause lung cancer because, grandma didn't get it.